Comedy Central caves to cancel culture, removes episode from the Office lineup. Is this a sign of a communist takeover? I'm going to go out on a limb and say no. But if this story is true, if Comedy Central did pull the episode of Diversity Day from The Office, this is as disturbing as it is pathetic. Even if this story is not true, what is true is that cancel culture is a real thing. Enough people have been getting canceled here and there. People have been losing their jobs over saying the wrong thing. And it's true, this has happened throughout humanity. You have to be careful. There are certain people in positions of power who want to control things. And that's what we really need to focus on. In the article, there's a pretty good video with this one sociology professor. And it's hard to tell if she's either downplaying cancel culture or if she's kind of alluding to the threat that it can possibly have. And of course, they're lump summing a bunch of movements in there. And I understand the Me Too movement. The Black Lives Matter movement, we have to start calling this out. More people need to be aware that the founders of Black Lives Matter, who have openly stated they're Marxists, these are people who do not have good intentions. They don't have good intentions for the country. They don't have good intentions for Black Americans. They are pushing a lot of this divide. And I find it interesting because The Office, I love The Office. And that's, by the way, my favorite episode is the episode called The Convict, which is episode 9 from season 3, where Steve Carell, the actor, who plays Michael Scott, he pretends to be Prison Mike. I'm not going to get into all the details. If that particular episode has not been canceled, I highly recommend watching it. Hilarious. Diversity Day, I wonder if they canceled it because not only was everyone wearing little index cards on their heads to show whatever their race was or their ethnicity, but Michael Scott, he's got one that says Martin Luther King Jr. And I suspect that the reason why this episode got pulled, if it's true, it's because probably some of the higher ups, somebody there found that offensive. Or worse yet, probably some activist found that offensive and put some pressure onto Comedy Central to pull that. And this is what we need to start realizing. A lot of this is coming from a small group of people. It's not coming from all liberals. Because, by the way, I came across this whole hullabaloo about this story thanks to a post on Facebook where a relative reposted somebody else's post that basically was saying, when can we admit this quote unquote liberal trend is more authoritarian than it is liberal? Let's not blame this on all liberals. And this is the problem. Like, we are finding it so hard as a society to calibrate between a time and place to be liberal and a time and place to be conservative. And we need both. We need both of them. And when it's not so bad, it surfaces in the form of an episode like this getting canceled. And by the way, Comedy Central is a private company. If they don't want to show that, now that they own the rights to those shows, hey, that's their right. Now, when it's at its worst, this inability to calibrate, and more importantly, the inability to distinguish what is true and what is false, we end up with all the riots that we had in 2020 over the death of George Floyd and the false narrative, the deliberate misrepresentation of his death as some sort of systematic killing of unarmed Black Americans by police officers. When in actuality, in 2019, I think it was under 24 unarmed Black Americans were killed by police officers. Almost twice the amount of unarmed white Americans were killed by police officers also in 2019. So this narrative that's being pushed that Black Americans are being targeted for systematic execution by racist police officers, that's just not true. And more people died as a direct result of the 2020 riots over that false narrative than the number of unarmed Black Americans that got killed in 2019. I think it was close to 35 people who died from the riots during 2020. And by the way, nobody ever mentions how many police officers die on the job. Every year, it's averages, I believe, over 100. It's about 140, something like that. That's about the average of the amount of police officers that get killed on the job. It's such a shame. This should not be so difficult nowadays. We should not be canceling episodes like Diversity Day, and we should not be going off on hundreds of riots throughout the country over false narratives, over miscalibration of when is a good time to be liberal, when is a good time to be conservative, and also what is offensive and what is not offensive. Anyway, I hope this video makes some sense. At the very least, I had fun doing this drawing of Prison Mike as I did this. I hope this, I don't know, sheds some light on what is cancel culture and the reality of it, and that it's not a communist takeover of our country. But if we don't start doing a better job of identifying the bad faith actors who do this, it's going to get worse, especially if we, instead of identifying those bad faith actors, um, we keep just blaming the other side. Oh, that's the liberals. Oh, that's the conservatives. No, it's not. It's a small group of people. And because I want to be careful with being sued by defamation or slander or libel, I want to be careful in naming who those people are. But off the top of my head, my assumptions are people like Al Sharpton, the founders of Black Lives Matter, Ibram X. Kendi, Robin DiAngelo, the white woman, by the way, who wrote A White Fragility. These are the people you want to look to when it comes to this, not just liberals in general, you know. And that's the thing. It's the last thing I'm going to say is that racism is an ugly, ugly, massive sore on this country's history. And it needs to be dealt with. We need to talk about it, but we also need to be very careful with people who have been affected by racism. People like Al Sharpton, a person who grew up probably witnessing segregation. He grew up, I believe he was born before the civil rights movement. So I don't blame him for having that level of resentment. Or look, someone like Trevor Noah, who works at Comedy Central, who has the Daily Show now. He's in position of Jon Stewart. He grew up in South Africa under apartheid. They have every right to have a level of animosity towards, I guess, white people. But they're having a hard time putting that in check, it seems. They're having a hard time putting that into perspective. And they're becoming the very monsters that they seem to want to fight. And that's the problem. And then that's why everybody is getting blamed. Anybody who is not on their side, even Black Americans who don't agree with their narratives, well, then you're an Uncle Tom. It's just, these problems should not be that difficult to see through and to solve in the 21st century. We don't need to be canceling episodes like Diversity Day from The Office, a comedy episode, no less. And by the way, a comedy episode that's trying to address these issues in the funniest way possible. Anyway, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and thanks for watching.